Welcome to Nomad PHP Lightning Talks. I'm Joe Ferguson. Nomad PHP Lightning Talks are 10-minute talks that give a high-level overview or an in-depth look at a small portion of a PHP-related topic. Lightning Talks are a great way for new speakers to build their speaking resume and for long-time speakers to test drive new talk ideas. If you'd like to give a 10-minute lightning talk, please email me, joe@nomadphp.com. Right now we have Gareth Ellis, and he's going to talk about your first PR, how to contribute to open source projects. Please make sure you visit JoinedIn after the talk and leave Gareth some feedback. Gareth, take it away. I'll make you prisoner.
Hello, I'm Gareth Ellis, and I'm going to talk tonight about your first pull request and contributing to open source. I'm not particularly well known in the PHP community, so I'll just briefly introduce myself. I'm a developer in the language services team at Icon PLC, and I work in a group which provides translation services to the clinical research industry. My job is to develop and manage a suite of applications which are used by our staff, customers and suppliers alike. I've only been a professional developer for a few years, done a few other things before that, and I'm a co-founder and organiser of PHP Oxford, a relatively new user group in the UK. And pertinently to this talk, I'm an occasional contributor to various open source projects, including Cake PHP, and contributing is something that I find to be a lot of fun and very rewarding, but it also took me a while to find the right way into it. So I wanted to share the whys, the whats and the hows of getting involved for those who are looking to get started and make a contribution but aren't sure where to begin. First of all, you may be wondering why you should contribute to open source. For me, I'm very much aware that I earn a living coding projects in an open source language and using open source frameworks and libraries. Many of those open source projects that we all use every day in our jobs have little to no funding and are maintained by volunteers who give up their spare time. Personally, I wanted to pay forward that community spirit and give something back to those projects. They say to be a better writer, you need to read more. In my opinion, this holds true for writing code as well. I have found that I have improved as a developer simply by reading other people's code, and contributing code to open source projects often necessitates a whole lot of code reading, introducing you to concepts, patterns and techniques you might not otherwise have come across. If you work on a small team, contributing to open source is also a great way to get feedback from other developers on your work. Last and not least, contributing to open source can be fun and very rewarding. Seeing your pull request merged and released is a very satisfying thing to experience, particularly if it's a widely used library or framework. As my friend Nils from PHP Oxford put it, it's good for the soul. Finding something to contribute was one of the things that took me the longest to get a handle on. So here are a few ways that you can contribute and how you can work out what to contribute. The first thing to do is to identify the project. You might actively seek that project, going out, finding projects which are in need of contributions, or the project may come to you, so to speak, through your work. In my case, my first ever pull request came as a result of noticing a typo in a comment block in a project that I was using at work, and I decided to help that project by fixing that typo. There are many ways to contribute to open source, and these can include interacting with the project and or its users and community through GitHub, Stack Overflow and other platforms. So contributing could include submitting an issue on GitHub, asking or answering a question on Stack Overflow. And if you've submitted an issue on GitHub, you could even consider whether you could address that problem yourself. I found it's often as simple as checking out the code base, delving into the source, and I've ended up making several contributions to projects this way. If you've answered a question on Stack Overflow, think about whether the original question reveals a gap in the project's documentation. It could be that the person who asked the question couldn't find what they needed in the documentation, so maybe your contribution could be to fill in that gap. And of course, this code, the act of submitting changes to the project source. This could include new features, bug fixes, or even writing tests. And making a code contribution doesn't necessarily mean writing hundreds of lines of code or spending hours working on some big new feature. It can be as simple as correcting a comment or a typo. The image here is the diff from my first ever pull request that I made to the Cake PHP project. And as you can see, it's a very simple pull request, just one line in a shell script. If you want to make a contribution to a project, it could be that the project itself has already identified a need for a bug fix or a new feature. You could check out the issues on GitHub, tickets on Jira, or browse whatever platform the project uses and see if there's something that you can help out with. Finally, I'd like to talk about how to contribute. In this case, I mean the technical process of taking a project on GitHub, making changes, and getting a pull request merged. Before you write any code, I would strongly recommend thinking about whether you need to discuss the changes with the project maintainers first. It could be that your idea is already being discussed elsewhere, or that someone else is working on something similar. Or it could be that whatever you want to do simply isn't appropriate for that project and the pull request wouldn't ever get merged. So if you're unsure, or if what you're going to be working on is particularly complex or time consuming, start a discussion with the maintainers. Most popular open source projects have guidelines for contributors covering everything from what process to follow in submitting a pull request, all the way through to what code style to use and what kind of test coverage is expected. If these guidelines exist, make sure you read and adhere to them. It will save everyone a lot of time if you do this ahead of time. The process for actually submitting a pull request is fairly straightforward, and I've broken it down into 8 steps. Note that this process specifically applies to projects using GitHub, although projects which use other platforms may have a very similar process. The first step is forking. Forking is the process of making your own copy of the repository. So to fork a project, you need to visit the repository homepage for that project, and at the top right of that homepage on GitHub, you'll see the fork button with a number next to it, and the number represents the number of other people who have previously forked that project. Simply click the fork button and you'll make your copy of the repository under your GitHub account. Next, you need to clone that repository. So cloning is the process of downloading a copy of your fork to your system. To clone it, you'll need to grab the Git URI from the homepage of your forked repository and then clone it by typing git clone followed by that URI at your terminal. The URI can be found near the top right of the repository homepage by clicking on the green clone or download button. There is also a clipboard icon next to the URI for easily copying that URI to your clipboard. Once it's finished cloning, CD into the folder where the repo was saved. You may then need to do type other commands in order to make sure you have the necessary project dependencies. For example, composer install for a PHP project. After the repository is downloaded, you should add the original repository as the upstream remote in Git. This means that your forked local copy can stay up to date with changes in the original project. To do this, you'll need to get the Git URI from the original repository homepage and then type git remote add upstream followed by that URI in your terminal. Now that the repository is configured, you can get to work. Start by creating a new branch for whatever piece you are working on. In Git, you can create a new branch and check it out in one go by typing at your terminal git checkout-b followed by the name of the new branch. After you've checked out your new branch, you can get to the fun part, writing code. Remember to follow those contribution guidelines. Also, make sure to write or modify tests where necessary and as required by the project. If you're working on a bug fix, I find it really useful to write a failing test first before I do any coding, which proves the existence of the bug. Then I know that when that test passes, I know I have successfully fixed the bug. When you're done with the code and your tests are passing, you can commit your changes. It's important to write a helpful descriptive commit message to help keep a good record of what changes have been made to the project and why. Finally, push the changes back up to GitHub by typing git push-u origin followed by the name of your branch. Once the changes are pushed to GitHub, you need to submit a pull request. To do this, visit the homepage for your forked repository and look for the big green Compare and Pull Request button. Clicking the button will open the Open a Pull Request page. On this page, make sure that the base fork and head fork are correct. They'll need to point to the original repository and your fork respectively, and you'll need to select the branch that you were working on for your contribution as the compare branch under the head fork. Provide a helpful descriptive title for your pull request and add some detail on why you've created it in the text field. If the pull request is linked with any issue threads, add references to these in the description field by typing a hashtag and then the number of the issue. If you scroll down to the bottom of this page, you'll see a diff of the changes. It's always worth double checking that this contains what you expect before you actually press the green Create Pull Request button. The final step before your pull request is merged into the project is review by the project maintainers. You should prepare to respond to comments and questions from the maintainers, and if changes to your contributions are required, you just need to commit and push those changes back to the same branch on your fork. You don't need to submit a new pull request. Hopefully, after review is complete, your pull request will be merged and you will have successfully made your first open source contribution. Congratulations! So that's pretty much it for this talk. I'd just like to finish with a few links. Your first pull request, Issue Hub and Up for Grabs are projects which aim to get wannabe contributors matched up with appropriate issues that need addressing in the languages and tools that people are interested in working in. So do check those out if you're looking for a project to contribute to. I haven't contributed to it myself, but I've heard great things about the Joined In project and how welcome it is to new contributors. So again, if you're looking for something to help out on, the team there will certainly be very welcoming. And there's also 2 blog posts which may be of interest. The first by Rob Allen is a beginner's guide to contributing to a GitHub project, and it goes over in a little more detail than I've just done that same process of forking, cloning, pushing and submitting a pull request. And the last link is from Lorna Mitchell's blog, and she talks about how she conducts a code review. And I find this is a really useful post for looking at exactly what open source maintainers are looking for when they're reviewing a pull request. So it's something useful to read before you make a contribution. So thanks very much for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email or a tweet. And thank you very much to Nomad PHP for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us for another Nomad PHP Lightning Talk. If you'd like to give a lightning talk, please email joe@nomadphp.com. Please make sure you visit Joined In and leave Garrett some feedback.